had an escort. No shame, obviously, sex work is real work. I've had sex with not even escorts, but also like straight. I've gone to a brothel, Artemis, in Berlin, and had sex with the workers there. Yes.
Set off more intense debates about whether all sex work, stripping, and brothels are inherently exploitive. And there are arguments that it is. Many pointed out that Berlin authorities raided Artemis back in 2016 as part of a human trafficking investigation.
It's disgusting how a person just publicly says this, let alone does it in private, but to just brag about it and talks about workers, people who are prostituted, many of whom from countries like Eastern Europe, and are being prostituted out of economic desperation. It's fucking disgusting.
Why does this degenerate fucking loser say this shit? Like, why not go to more fucking sex clubs where, like, little girls are being fucking trafficked? Isn't that what you like?
I have been covering way too much Hasan lately, but when the Patreon demands, I'm but a humble servant. So enjoy, because I'm shifting gears with my next video and I'm going after Nuxtaku and Mutahar. If you follow online politics, you might have seen Hasan Piker be accused by various parties of some version of having gone to an infamous German brothel named Artemis to very specifically entertain the sexual services of an underage human trafficked victim being sold in there. The accusations range from random inflammatory no-names accusing him of deranged shit, like what I just mentioned, and through people who simply have the timeline incorrectly, all the way to people giving the broader story in a way crafty enough that keeps them immune from potential lawsuits, while still allowing them to clout chase. Almost all of those people are wrong. Many of them are knowingly lying to you. Those of you who know me might wonder, hey Chris, why are you making an entire video about Hasan being accused of something he did not do when you despise Hasan, you regularly call him a spineless fuckwit, and you could have very easily limited this to a stream segment? Well, my sweet cherry pie, because Hasan is lying about Artemis too. And I'll tell you not just how he does it, but why I think he does, and how bad the consequences of him being a fucking weaselly little liar dude actually are. As always, the video will be timestamped, and if you end up enjoying it, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe buttons, leave a comment down below, and I also highly encourage you to join my Discord and my Patreon. So, without any further ado, let us jump into it. Germany, this little blot of land right here, responsible for 2 world wars, some of my favourite celebrities, and is the world capital of furries, is also a place where prostitution and brothels are very legal and very popular. Artemis happens to be one of these brothels, specifically one of the largest in Germany, located in Berlin. It's a 4-story building with saunas, cinemas, a pool, and room for 600 customers and 70 prostitutes at any one given time. What's important to know is that because prostitution is legal in Germany, the female sex workers at Artemis are regularly interviewed by officials from the state criminal police, indicatively for the purpose of ensuring everything is functioning in a legal and above-the-board manner. The controversy that makes people bring Artemis up when attacking Hasan happened in 2016, when Artemis was raided by 900 police officers and custom officers, investigating them for 2 reasons. Firstly, tax evasion, which you might want to keep in mind, and secondarily, far more importantly really, due to certain allegations from a victim who came forward. Given the size of the raid, you might wonder what the fuck happened, and you'd be correct for wondering. A woman who has come forward to the police to tell them about how Hell's Angels, an outlaw motorcycle group, forced a number of women to work in Artemis. When I say forced, I'm not mincing words. I mean that in the you will be beaten if you disobey kind of way. Following that, the German police has arrested a number of people working at Artemis in relation to these allegations, and while the investigation continued, the brothel was reopened the next day. 2 months later, the highest state court of Berlin ordered the release of 2 managers and 4 sex workers that they were still holding due to insufficient evidence, and their defense lawyers announced plans to sue. Following this, very recently in 2023, Artemis has won both of their lawsuits, and the city of Berlin had to firstly pay slightly over $100,000 for the comments at the time of the raid that came from the public prosecutor's office, and then later another $270,000, as well as issue an official apology for the wrongful detention of Artemis employees. So far, pretty good for Artemis, but unfortunately for Hasan, this is not the full story. He already downplays the entire sex trafficking angle for no fucking reason, and there is still more grim reality that we have to contend with. But you see, the victim who came forward that I mentioned earlier, she was underage. She came forward and reported that she was beaten and forced to sell sex at Artemis by a member of Hell's Angels, the international motorcycle group that I mentioned earlier, who are unaffiliated with Artemis. And I would assume that with Hasan being a fellow left-wing political speaker, much like myself, he would err on believing the victim. So he is either unaware of this or he doesn't care. See, this underage victim had talked to the police about her abusive pimp, a former professional football player, who would then be convicted later of trafficking, coercion and extortion, and sentenced to 7 years in prison in October of 2017. It is worth mentioning, however, that Artemis still functions to this day, and that is most probably because they didn't facilitate any of this knowingly, and they continue existing above board right now. I'm not pointing this out for the Hasan bad stonks, I'm merely pointing out that finding all of this would take you probably under 2 hours of your precious time. Hasan streams for 8 hours a day. He is one of the most broadly criticized people on the internet. You saw the number of attacks on him in the opening section of this video. Do you believe that he's simply unaware of all of the shady shit that happened in Artemis, but simultaneously is aware of enough that the raid happened for tax evasion reasons, even though every single article I could find on the topic always mentions both the tax evasion and the human trafficking investigation? Bit of a selective memory there, don't you think? Now that we understand Artemis, we should talk about Germany itself. Lovely country, cool people, and unfortunately, according to Eurostat, as of 2022 was a country with the highest reported number of human trafficking victims in the entirety of Europe. On top of that, according to the US Department of State 2024 Trafficking in Persons report, Germany, I quote, "Although the government meets the minimum standards, judges continued to issue lenient sentences, resulting in 63% of convicted traffickers receiving fully suspended sentences, fines, or less than 1 year of imprisonment, which undercut efforts to hold traffickers accountable, weakened deterrence, created potential security and safety concerns for victims, and was not equal to the seriousness of the crime." On top of that, anywhere between 63 and 80% of registered prostitutes in Germany are foreigners. On top of that, if you look for stats on how many sex workers in Germany are victims of human trafficking, you will see numbers ranging as high as 90%. Hey, you don't have to take my word for any of it, you can just Google the words human trafficking plus Germany and tell me if by the time you're done researching this, you're comfortable with Hasan downplaying what happened. So now that you're richer through the knowledge I bestowed on you, and you happen to be in Germany and you want to get your dick wet, and you happen to be nearby a cheeky Red Lantern district, don't. Because if you do, the odds of you fucking a victim of sex trafficking and then using your wallet to provide monetary support to human traffickers isn't exactly slim. But hey, I yap and yap and yap, and I'm yet to solidify that Hasan does in fact downplay what I just mentioned. So that's what we'll move on to now. I will include a small disclaimer, not that Hasan deserves it, but we should strive to be better. Maybe, given that he streams 8 hours a day, 10 days a week, it's possible that he did in fact include a segment in one of those streams where he not only goes over everything I just mentioned with good faith and due diligence and either debunks it or acknowledges his shortcomings, and it just so happens that nobody clipped it or highlighted it or re-uploaded it anywhere because I sure as fuck couldn't find that video. What I did find is an instance of Hasan downplaying the entire brothel discourse 3 years ago in October of 2021 and then downplaying it again 3 weeks ago in much of the same manner. So that cool segment I mentioned earlier, yeah, my money is on it not existing. But hey, I would love to be proven wrong.
Come back again next week when we discuss the legendary question of all time, old enough to count, old enough to mount, question mark?
Oh, wrong clip. Sorry. My bad. My bad.
Wait, the brothel thing is crazy because he openly admitted that he knows. He openly admitted that he knows that they were fucking raided for tax evasion, basically. Like he's saying, like, it's fine. They weren't raided for sex trafficking, but it doesn't matter. I'm just gonna keep lying about it. Okay, sick.
So that was a recent clip from 17th of November where Hasan, responding to someone criticizing him, says he openly admitted that he knows that they were raided for tax evasion, basically. Less than 3 weeks ago. And that is, to be clear, not quite true, is it? A ton of people nowadays are aware of just how grim the reality of sex work in Germany is, and just how fucking messy of a subject area it is. I would wager that Hasan does too, but Hasan won't address it though. It is far more profitable for him to act like all the people against him here are either sex work exclusionary radical feminists or insane people who just yell insane shit at top of their lungs.
So he posts this article as though like I'm, morally culpable in this situation. But then I looked a little bit deeper into it. I was like, that's kind of fucked up. I mean, not kind of fucked up, it was super fucked up. What is it? First of all, it was for fucking tax evasion.
Yeah,
okay?
I saw that.
And secondly, there was accusations that like there might be sex trafficking going on, but all of the people that were pointed to in that situation, they were released. And I believe the brothel is now suing the city of Berlin for damages too.
And that was from 3 years ago, and funnily enough, it's better than his modern day take, but unfortunately it still falls short. No mention of the underage victim, no mention of the Hells Angel member who was sentenced for 7 years for forcing his underage girlfriend to sell her body at Artemis, no mention of how there are apparently other victims there too, no mention of how rampant human trafficking is in Germany, especially in the sex work industry, no mention of how dangerously possible it can be for an unaware, horny, idiot viewer of Hasanabi's, the biggest political live streamer in the world for what it's worth, to go to a brothel in Germany and literally support human trafficking. You might think that's a stretch, and I hope you're right, but if you're not, we've got a problem of Hasan's making. There already was a situation 3 years ago where a fan of his, wearing his merch, went to a strip club and Hasan signal boosted the fuck out of this.
To other news, we should definitely talk about left-wing political commentator and Twitch streamer Hasan Piker in the news. I'm actually really interested to know your thoughts on this one. So on Thursday, Piker tweeted out a video of one of his fans getting a lap dance at a strip club while wearing his merch, captioning it "real Sigma behavior," saying that the video was sent to him by a friend who he later said works at the club and gave him permission to share it.
Now, I understand that it's not a parallel situation. Not at all. It wasn't a brothel. All parties were adults, and everyone left the place happy. How much of a stretch do you really think it would be for a stupid kid that idolizes Hasan, who unapologetically went to a German brothel and not only had a good time, but defends having done so, to hear about it and then do the same? Feel free to tell me in the comments down below. So here's the big question. If Hasan went to the brothel long before it was raided, when he was like 19 years old, given that Hasan is pro-sex work, and given how Artemis was not only found not guilty of the human trafficking stuff, but sued back for damages caused by the raid and won that suit, why does Hasan still lie about what transpired? And honestly, despite what I've titled this segment, I'm not sure. Is it because he's worried that people will use this against him? I mean, they would, of course. Of course they would. Is it because the allegations are not coming in good faith? I suppose that's possible, but he has a really bad history of responding to allegations that do, or well, criticism I should say, that does come in good faith. Maybe because Hasan doesn't know how to square his opinion about brothels in Germany with his whole no ethical consumption under capitalism attitude? Maybe it's all of those things. Or maybe it's because Hasan, being a great supine protoplasmic invertebrate jelly, is deathly afraid of accountability and owning up to his own bad behavior, especially when it comes wrapped in a genuine conundrum that has no good answers, and would potentially put him at odds with his own community. You see, being pro-sex work comes with quite a lot of responsibility actually, something that Hasan, generally speaking, tries to avoid as much as humanly possible. You can't really have a take here on this specific matter that doesn't end up with someone being hurt, especially if you believe that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism. if you come out against brothels in Germany, like I am doing currently, at least until they start taking human trafficking more seriously, then you risk that there are going to be legit sex workers out there in German brothels who utilize their craft to put food on the table that would be out of their jobs because of you, or because of me in this case. On the other hand, if you're like Hasan and you don't want to come out against it and instead would rather give them business and money as well as pretend to your fanbase that all is fun and Gucci, you risk victims of human trafficking getting raped by you. I prefer the first option, Hasan appears to prefer the second, which is kind of fucking insane if you ask me. I don't want to do no lefty cringe ass gatekeeping shit, but bro literally looked at the state of sex work in Germany and went,
"Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make."
Now, because of Hasan's insistence to never address this in a manner that makes it easy for people to access his genuine thoughts, we're left with a fella who believes that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, who went to a brothel which had cases of underage forced prostitution in a country that is the European hotspot for human trafficking, and when confronted on this, he pretends in front of millions of impressionable viewers that the only thing the brothel got raided for was tax evasion, and that anyone attacking him for having gone there is anti-sex work. So with all of this, we have to arrive at our own conclusions. And my conclusion is that Hasan is a vile, spineless, garbage fucking human being who would have an easier time sleeping at night knowing that an unaware and ignorant, much like he was in 2010 really, fan of his might go and fuel the cycle of sexual exploitation of human trafficking victims than he would if he risked potentially upsetting his community by having to acknowledge that telling people to avoid brothels in Germany doesn't make you anti-sex work, and he should have never fucking gone there. Hasan says he wants to have an honest conversation about this, but he doesn't. Not really, and in fairness, most people attacking him don't either. At the end of the day, people say they care about all of this shit because it's a feels good man moment, but none of them really do. Hasan has no incentive here, to be honest, because the only upside of doing so would be to uphold his own moral consistency and making the world a slightly better place. Neither of which he remotely cares about, especially if it would potentially negatively affect his concurrent viewership numbers. So to conclude, you have Germany, a country with a really serious sex trafficking issue. You have Artemis, a brothel in Germany that, while predominantly functioning above board, has in fact unknowingly facilitated victims of human trafficking, some of whom were underage, being forced to sell sex there. And you got Hasan, who went to that brothel, had sex with apparently prostitutes, plural, and now years later is downplaying everything about it. Not just by lying about the nature of the police raid on Artemis, but by also using the idea of sex workers as a literal human shield to pretend like anyone who takes issue with his behavior is actually anti-sex work. I'm explicitly pro-sex work, just ask your mum. That'll be it for today. A relatively short video with a subject matter I haven't really seen people cover properly, so here we are. I hope you enjoyed listening to me, and if you did, then remember to like and subscribe. And remember to join my Discord and my Patreon. Special thanks to all my patrons and my golden OnlyFans. Please be on the lookout for my next video where we attack Noxtaku, Mutaha, and possibly a whole bunch of other people. Drink plenty of water, and good night. I'll talk to you very soon.